Sometimes it feels like the sun will never rise, like the birds will never sing again. Believe in a power greater than what you are going through. When you don't know what to do, keep breathing.
That's right. When you don't know what to do, just keep on breathing. From the City of Angels in Los Angeles, welcome to all my listeners out there in Radio Land. I'm Dave, the Caregiver's Caregiver at caregiverdave.com, along with my lovely co-host, best-selling author and former mayor of Grover Beach in Central California, Debbie Peterson. And we're also coming to you live and on demand 24/7 on numerous syndicated radio and podcast networks on 30 global audio and video platforms, all including iHeart Radio, iTunes, YouTube, Spreaker, SoundCloud, Vimeo, Stitcher Radio, Spotify, and the list goes on and on. And we are proud to be voted #1 caregiver podcast on FeedSpot out of thousands, and #1 caregiver podcast on the top 50 on Player FM. And we have an especially exciting show planned for today. How leaving a corporate job to become an at-home caregiver gave this gentleman 48 hours to save his daughter's life. So they're a family of 5. The Stanberrys wrote their first family memoir in autumn 2024, just recently. It's never too late, sometimes. The memoir is about how they dealt with the shock of 2-year-old Samantha, who was initially diagnosed with what was thought to be cancer, but later turned out to be an equally devastating disease, severe acute A-plastic anemia. What began as routine doctor visits spiraled into a lengthy 20 years of treatment for Samantha. Despite this challenge, Samantha in 2024 walked across the graduation stage to collect her law degree, along with her siblings who earned BSs and MSs in artificial intelligence. Great field. Samantha is now on the path to being called to the bar. Over 20 years, while going through the health challenges, all 5 of them earned 7 degrees from one university, University of London. But before we get started, I do want to take this moment and thank my last week's guest, Christopher Lee Maher, Navy SEAL. Now he's healing people from what he's learned because his body was broken. And just a reminder, you can listen to that interview and all our interviews, including this one, at caregiverdave.com or any of the other platforms I mentioned earlier. Okay, enough of that. Stanberrys, how are you today?
I am doing good, thank you.
Welcome
I'm doing well,
to
thank you.
Show. And we always like to ask our guests, just who are you guys and why were you placed on this earth?
Well, it's good that you asked that question. Part of who we are, you mentioned earlier. Yvonne and I are just 2 members of a family of 5. We have 3 children. And as you mentioned, one of them had a devastating illness that changed the trajectory of our lives.
I assume you prayed for her and that had something to do with her healing.
Well, absolutely. There were quite a lot of prayers. I like to coin words. And while we were going through the difficulty, I said, Yvonne, I'll worry. For whatever reason, I like to worry. And I said, Yvonne, you are a good prayer. So pray. You know, like someone is a good runner. So I said, Yvonne, you're a good prayer. So you do most of the praying while I do most of the worrying. And is traffic going to be bad for me to get downtown, to get to the hospital? Let me think of alternate routes and so forth. So we divide the task. And that was mainly my task. But Yvonne did a lot of the praying, as well as others.
What an amazing story you have. It would make a good Hallmark movie. So don't give up on trying to share your story to the world.
Okay.
Well, good to hear that.
So let's start at the very beginning, which is where most people should start. What inspired your family to write this book together? How did the collaborative process shape the narrative?
Okay, so it is an interesting question, very interesting question. So the book, which I have a copy of here, and as you can see, we have notes all over. Each time I read it, I reread it, I have copious notes. It's never too late sometimes. And the title was an evolution of us thinking through what the title should be. And this was the final title. Why did we write it? We really made the decision perhaps 6 months into how the book started, with the sickness of our daughter, Samantha. And I left home at 5:30 one morning, traveled on a 1-hour flight to another part of the country for a meeting. And the next time I saw Yvonne was in a hospital. When I saw her in the hospital, for whatever reason, I don't know, I started making copious notes. And we ended up with 2 binders full of notes. About 6 months after that day, when I saw her in the hospital after leaving her at home in the morning, we said, we perhaps should write a book about our journey.
Yeah.
And
Yes,
another year passed, we said the same thing. Another year passed, we said the same thing, but we kept keeping all the notes. It was a long journey where Samantha was on active medication for almost 7 years.
Yeah.
And during that time, we were getting more medical records and more notes and more blood works. And when they go into the bones to take the bone aspirate out, we're getting all of those results. And we kept all of them for unknown reasons. Now we know why. So 20 years or so later, we decided in the summer of 2024 that this is the time to write the book. And we copied the notes from the book and then we put them into words. And we felt we should have done it to begin with because we thought that others who have gone through similar or the same circumstances could learn from how we thought our lives were just simple, and we think it is, but from how we simply navigated these pathways. But most importantly, I think it is in 2002, for whatever reason, we made a decision that, and we mention it in the book as well. It's in the book where we said, let us do a budget, a pro forma budget, to see what will it be like to have 2 children in daycare full time and 1 child in half day daycare, because he was by then going to school half day in senior kindergarten or junior. I don't remember which one, but kindergarten. And it took us a year. We did a mock budget. We ignored Yvonne's income and lived only on our income. And we just saved the rest. And there were challenges, some months. But by March of 2003, we decided this is it. We can live on 1 budget because financially it made no sense for us to have 1 child or 3 children in daycare.
Yeah.
And then Yvonne resigned her job.
That's right.
And then within the same week, her last day at work was when we saw the signs of some sickness on our daughter. So with all of these things coming, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, well, I'm just really curious. I know we've got a note that your daughter didn't have cancer, which you thought she might have, but she had aplastic anemia. And I have no idea what that is. Can you explain a little bit about that for people who may want to look out for similar things?
It's a great question because aplastic anemia and the more severe form of that disease, sometimes called acute aplastic anemia or severe acute aplastic anemia, is not what we think of when we think of the regular term anemia, where someone's red blood cells are low and their iron levels are low and so forth. It's another disease that is not anemia, as the term A in aplastic suggests.
Is it more like a leukemia?
It is very much like leukemia. So you already know much about aplastic anemia. It is where the body's blood-making factory, the long bones in your leg, or is not making blood. So all your blood lines, like your red, white, platelets especially, are low. And what happens with that is if your platelets are low and you get a cut, perhaps you won't clot, so you bleed forever. And if it gets so low that you don't even have a cut, your internal organs start bleeding. And Yvonne can describe what was happening when she would comb Samantha's hair. Talk about it.
So like the week before I resigned, on the weekend, I was combing her hair and there was blood on her scalp. I find it strange. Very strange. So I got very curious about it. And then like a couple of days later, I came home from work and noticed there was a big bruise on her tummy. And I asked around my son, who was older, did she have a fall or anything like that? He said no. My mom was looking after them during the day. So I asked my mom if she had an accident. She said no. So I'm saying for a big bruise like that on a tummy, there should be some reaction to it. Somebody should know that something happened, you know? So nothing happened to her. So we decided to book an appointment with the pediatrician to have it checked out.
If I could just show you something, the bruise on her looked as if someone was using an object. This is just a letter opener. It looks like you were using the handle part of a letter opener, stabbing her continuously. That's how bad the bruise looked.
Yeah.
So what did the doctor say?
So I took her to, well, actually, now the week starts when I resigned. So I'm home now. Cleveland left to the airport. So I went back to bed. I had my devotion, prayed, and just after ending my prayer, I heard the voice said, Samantha is sick and the clock is ticking. So I opened my eyes and looked around, and there was no one else in the room but me. So shortly after that, two of my children came inside the room, my son, Clive Anthony, and one of the twins, Antoinette, and I noticed Samantha, who I got the message for, wasn't with them. So I asked, where is Samantha? My son said, she's sleeping. So I asked him to go and wake her. He returned back to my room with Samantha, and I keep looking at her to see what is wrong with her. So I asked her if she's feeling okay. She said yes. So I explained to the children that I'm going to call grandma, have grandma watch the two of you while I take Samantha to the doctor.
Wow.
So I went to the doctor. My doctor said to me, he's going to give me a letter. Yeah, she still had the bruise. Yeah, she still had the bruise. So my doctor told me that he's going to send me to hospital 1 with a note to take to hospital 1. And so when I went to hospital 1 gave me another note to go to hospital 2. When I went to hospital 2, I ended up staying there for 4 days. So when I left the house that morning, I didn't return home until 4 days later with Samantha.
And specifically what the doctor said, the first doctor, the family doctor, he didn't say what he thought it was, but he knew what was going on because he's had patients like that. As rare as the disease is, he said in hindsight, he told us like a year later, most doctors wouldn't know that this disease. But hospital 1 told Yvonne that we think it's cancer. That's the first hospital I saw Yvonne at. Yeah. When I left that morning, I eventually figured out that she was at the hospital when I called home, and grandma told me she's going to
like a skin cancer?
They didn't say what cancer. They just said, we think it's cancer. Go straight to hospital 2, where hospital 2 is a children's hospital, a center for, actually it's a global center for research in leukemia, myelodysplasia, and aplastic anemia.
Right.
And the doctors there are university professors. So it's a teaching hospital of sorts as well. So that's the first time we heard the term cancer. So in terms of what did the doctor say, that was one term that the doctor said was first cancer. And then it evolved onto other terms. So term
how
was
did they, you had toddlers at that point, and 3 toddlers. And how did they treat your daughter? What is it that helped her heal?
Oh, so multiplicities of treatment approaches to help her heal. That Thursday when she was admitted was platelet transfusions, not whole blood, just platelets. So when she showed up, her platelets was 4.
Yeah.
The count was 4, and they gave her 2 units of a single donor platelet, which should really push it all the way up to maybe 20, 40.
Yeah.
So from 4. So they gave her that the Thursday evening, maybe 7 p.m. And they said they tested Friday morning. Friday morning, they were expecting it to shoot up to like 20 or 40. But for the Friday morning, it dropped from 4 to 2. Now, I later learned, I have a sister who is a physician in the US. I called her that day and said, hey, this is what's happening. I've never heard of this thing. And She said to me, you know what? All you have to do, let's pray and call me every single day over the weekend. Now I'm wiser. I knew why she said it. Back then I didn't know. Long story short, I eventually was advised by several physicians who were within her caring environment that by Friday morning, when her platelets dropped from 4 to 2, the existing literature said that death would occur in 24 to 48 hours. But they didn't tell me this then. And neither have they told me now. It's just me. I like to poke around and ask lots of questions of people, and I put things together, and I realized why they didn't tell me. But they had also called the morgue to say, hey, on Saturday morning, we have a body coming down. Because the literature said death should occur. It must occur. It's the norm. It's what has been seen. So what was happening then is that one doctor said to me, wow, what's happening? What's eating up her platelets like this? So the first treatment was platelets transfusion. So on that Friday morning, she got more platelets transfusion. And what we did was to give graphs, not one, of how the platelets, which by the way, we all need platelets in the region of 40 to 200 to survive and not have internal bleeding. So for 3 months or so, it was constant platelet transfusion. And then about a month later, after that first visit, the long-term treatment started. After they did some bone marrow aspirate to figure out what's happening inside of the bone marrow, which is the factor that makes blood. And they figured out now that it's not leukemia. It is severe acute aplastic anemia. And why is it severe? Because the platelet counts are below 10. And the literature as of that time was when it drops below 10 into the single digits, death is likely to occur 24 to 48 hours. Wow. So the treatment after that, the second treatment was an immunosuppressant treatment, which included a lot of drugs. The longest serving drug was cyclosporine. Yeah. And some other drugs were Atgam, pentamidine, and many others whose names we can't pronounce.
When did you know that she was out of the woods?
I would say that it was rather quickly. It was when the platelets count started rising within the 40 to 100 range. So this would have been about 2004, July, or summer, let me say in general. Yeah. Summer 2004, when we had some sense of thankfulness, celebration. Right. Looks like it's not falling back into the under 10s anymore.
Right.
So how old was she at that time?
2004, she would be 3.
No,
but two and a half by summer of 2004.
So
she was 3. Yeah.
All they did was keep giving her platelets, right? Because you said the first time they did it, it went down. This wasn't enough.
Could you repeat?
Did they give her more platelets?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. The platelets.
How many units did it take?
Oh, so she continued to get 2 units of single donor platelets for about 6 months.
Yeah.
Even while the long-term treatment started with the cocktail of drugs,
right?
With the immunosuppressant, she continued. So the platelet transfusion were like every day for 2 months, and then every other day for the remainder of the other 2 months, and then every 2 days, and then every week, then every month.
Is she still doing it?
No. So her last transfusion was about 2000, maybe 6.
Yeah.
So other than your faith and your prayers, did they come up with any explanation why the platelets finally started going up instead of down?
The reason for the platelets now going up was because the treatment, which was experimental back then, today now it is standard treatment. The NHS and UK and Canadian health ministries are now doing that. It's that what they did with the treatment was to suppress her immune system, like to let it not function at all. Because what happens in severe acute aplastic anemia, or aplastic anemia in general, is that the immune system of the body attacks the place that's making bad blood, which is the bone marrow. So by shutting down the immune system, it meant then, therefore, they could use other drugs to say, bone marrow, this is how you should work. And then they fixed it.
Yeah.
Now, is her bone marrow working as good as yours and mine? No. Her platelets are not as high as ours. They are perhaps, the last time she had her reading, it was like 120.
Yeah.
Yours and mine might be 220.
Yeah.
But she's not having bleeding and so forth and so on.
So you were their caregivers. You were
Right.
Samantha's
Yes.
caregiver. And tell us how that was. How did it affect the family? How did it affect your faith? How did it affect, just staying positive and the rest of the family? What was their reaction?
Okay, so how does it affect me and allow me to stay positive? I must go back to the voice. When I heard that voice, it was calm and peaceful. So with that peace, I wasn't worrying so much. As human, we still worry, but wasn't a big sense of worry because the peace was there that guided me through. And how did it affect the rest of the family, the other two children? It didn't affect them in any way because they didn't know how serious she was. Even Samantha didn't know how serious it was. We portray a sense of everything is all right. She just need to go see the doctor. We let them get involved in everything children get involved with so as to keep them occupied and busy and not let them worry about her sister being sick. So that's how we work with it.
Right.
Yeah.
Debbie, you got some more questions?
I'm curious. So apparently you were in London at the time. Are you in London right now?
No,
not now. We ended up having our education in London. I traveled to London and spent much time in London because I went back to school later in life. But the other members of the family did distance learning from London. So our London connection was just through education.
Yeah. And graduation.
And graduations, yes.
Oh,
and
nice. So you earned 7 degrees while you were going through all of this. What were the degrees? I'm just curious.
Okay. So for me, it was a BSc in sociology. And for Cleveland,
it was a BSc in business administration and an MBA, a Master of Business Administration. And for Samantha, who featured prominently in the book, it was an LLB, so a law degree. She had decided to do law since she was perhaps in grade 5.
That's right, yeah.
Because we are all avid readers, but Yvonne bought her a book, a law book.
A John Gresham book. John Gresham, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And in grade 5, she read it and decided she wanted to be a lawyer. So one of the reasons Samantha couldn't be here is, as I speak to you, she's sitting in her LLM class right now at this minute. She just texted us and said, I'm on campus. She works for a law firm, a boutique law firm, but she's doing her LLM part-time. And that is as part of the process to qualify her to sit the bar. So where we are now, we are in Toronto, Canada. And that's where she is planning to practice law in Ontario.
Yeah, I was just wondering about that because UK law is very different from US law. I mean, it depends where you are in the US, but in Canada, there's probably more similarities.
Very similar. Yeah. She's today, for example, she's doing a course in constitutional law, and Canada's constitution is based on the Westminster model of democracy. So there are many, many, many similarities. You swear allegiance to the crown, to the King of England. Today it was the Queen of England, and so forth. So it's very different from the US in some respects. So she's doing law. So in terms of the other degrees, our son has a master's in artificial intelligence and data science. And then our other daughter, and also he has an undergrad in mathematics and economics. Then our other daughter has a bachelor's in artificial intelligence, data science, and computer science.
Talk about your book, Never Too Late, Sometimes. Why the word sometimes? And what do you hope that people will get out of this book?
So the word sometimes is to ensure that there's a catch-all for those times when it's actually too late. I think of my mother. She died in 1979. I was about 14 years old. And I keep saying to Yvonne, she never got a chance to see any of her grandchildren, none of them. Not ours, not my siblings' grandchildren. So it's too late for her. However, like my son said to me, he was angry when I was contemplating not studying. He said, Daddy, you're not too old. You're breathing. And from that is where we thought of the title. It's never too late because you're breathing. It's never too late. Even if you have broken legs, perhaps you could use a wheelchair and get something accomplished. In our case, it wasn't too late despite our ages. We went back to school as parents. We were adults with children. That's when we went back to school. It wasn't too late. It wasn't too late for Yvonne to catch the disease because she obeyed that voice. Because when she left that Thursday morning to her family doctor, we already had secured an appointment with Samantha's pediatrician for the Saturday. But because I was not in the house, and I believe that's the reason, Yvonne was able to, and I couldn't get a hold of her. I was stuck in a conference that I was delivering. I arrived late in the city. Traffic was bad. I couldn't call her to say, hey, I arrived. And I was not there, so she could make independent decisions to say, I'm taking her to the family doctor, despite the fact we have an appointment on Saturday. So we actually caught it in time, or all the people involved. It wasn't too late. So that was one of the motivating things to say. It's not too late, but be more dogmatic to say it's never too late, but sometimes.
So what is the book teach someone who reads it? And what is your hope that the book will do to the community that buys it and reads it?
Well, that's one of the words, hope, is to provide hope.
That's
that
right.
There is proverbially a light at the end of the tunnel. I'll ask Yvonne to say what she hoped.
Yes, as I hope is one of them, because with with what we went through as a family, we still come out in the end being successful in terms of Samantha is still with us. She's able to pursue her education and continue life just like any other 23-year-old. So perseverance and faith is what, and hope, as Cleveland said, is what we would like readers to take away from this book.
As you both know, a lot of times, they do lose a loved one, regardless of the amount of prayer.
Yeah.
What do you say to those parents who believed and hoped and it didn't happen for them?
One of the things that I would say is what came to me one day. I was traveling from sick kids back home with Samantha in the back of the vehicle. And the thought just hit me, why us? Why did this happen to our family? But before the thought could even finish, before it could finish, I got the answer. And the answer was, it happens to our family because I said to myself, I'm not going to jump off a bridge. I'm going to fight this. So I am really of the opinion that many are the challenges of the righteous, or we who live in society, and bad things happens to us because we are able to cope and deal with it. But I'm a person of faith. So I believe that my maker will take me through it. If I experience it, I can overcome it. For those who didn't experience it, whatever it is, whatever the challenge is, they don't need to overcome it. And perhaps that's why they didn't experience it. So that's the mindset I would say to someone. If a challenge similar to this or different from this, but still a challenge, if a challenge hits you, it's hitting you because you're so strong to handle it.
It's amazing how fast time flies when you're having fun. How can people get a hold of you, find out more about the book, where they can purchase it?
So people can get a hold of us through all social media, which is Stanberry Archives. with an S. So our website is stanberryarchives.com. And Stanberry spells just like it is on the screen, on Yvonne Stanberry's name. And the book is available on Amazon.
Awesome. Debbie, you're involved in a lot of things political. How can people get a hold of you and your many books that you've written?
If you go to Amazon and you search for Debbie Peterson, Integrity 101, you'll find all 5 of my books. And go to mayordebbie.com if you want a little more information on some of the background.
Awesome.
Okay.
Remember, all our live shows become recorded pod and video casts on all your favorite platforms. My best-selling book, It's Your Life Too, How to Survive and Thrive as a Caregiver, is available wherever books are sold, and also on my free membership website, caregiverdave.com, where you can also schedule a free 30-minute initial coaching call. Talk about whatever you're struggling with. You can also join my community of 34,000 caregivers on Facebook, and I would encourage you guys to go to my Facebook page and and you can follow us that way as well. We have lots of tools, resources, videos, this radio show, and much more. And if you click the like or follow button on whatever platform you're on right now, it helps Google reach even more caregivers. Yeah, a big thank you, my listeners, my guests, to my co-hosts all over the world. You guys tuning in every Wednesday and making us the #1 caregiver podcast on the internet. Until next week, same time, same channel. May God richly bless you all.
I'm Dave Nasani. My 4th book, Secrets from the Hammock, Uncommon Wisdom for Uncommon Times, is a #1 bestseller on Amazon. As a young boy, I was told I possessed an unusual amount of wisdom for my age. As a young man, I found myself counseling friends and older family members whenever they needed answers to their problems. Then at 21, I read the Bible for the very first time and learned how King Solomon asked God for wisdom instead of riches, yet he received both. I was so impressed that I too asked God for wisdom. Soon after, I discovered when lying on my hammock, I would receive wisdom from God. This book is the result of my passion to share with the world wisdom's tremendous benefits. Join me as I reveal practical aspects of wisdom for the mind, body, and spirit. 31 lessons I learned from God that can change your life. Available in hardcover, Audible, Kindle, and paperback, wherever books are sold. I've spoken all over the country and London, and am available to speak at your event. Contact me at hammockwisdom.com.
Sometimes it feels like the sun will never rise, like the birds will never sing again.